Ah, no, I hit the wrong button. It never played the music. Oh no, here, we'll play the intro music now. Well, we are off to a great start. Welcome to MILIVE. I'm Jay. This is Brad. You know the rest of the deal.
I don't know if you know this, but today I am semi-casual Friday.
Semi-casual?
I've got my sport jacket on and a hat because I did not want to do my hair today.
But your hat matches your sport jacket, so that's acceptable.
And I shaved. I don't know if you noticed that, but I shaved again.
Me too. The screw back this morning.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's manly.
How can I get some of that? That's what I want to know.
It's really just like Rogaine that I just sprayed, and then a lot of eyeliner pencil.
That's actually probably pretty smart.
Yeah. So, how are you, Brad?
Dude, I'm living the American dream.
What about the Canadian dream?
I kind of want to be living the Canadian dream. I'm trying to move to Canada, to be honest with you.
I think the Canadian dream is the same thing as the American dream, except there's a lot more maple syrup involved.
And Molson's and Moose's and what other M words can I come up with? Mounties.
Mounties.
God, there was so many good alliterations there.
There were. I'm very impressed. So, Brad, what are we talking about today? I didn't have a show idea, and you messaged me and said, why don't we talk about these two things? And what were they? We're
talking about Le Carnivore Diet.
Okay.
And put a little French twist on it. I don't know if you noticed that.
Well, and Canadian.
And gluten.
So what made you want, let's start with the first one, carnivore. What made you want to discuss the carnivore topic at 8:05, at 8:20 this morning?
Because last night I was finalizing the last lecture slides for the NutriWiki course, and there's the carnivore diet on there. And I thought we could at least have a little bit more of like a roundtable discussion about it today.
Interesting. Well, yeah. I have something to add to the end of that, something that Liam came home from school with.
Okay.
A book they're reading on nutrition that I read last night.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, Brad. I'm opinionated.
No, you're not. You are the least opinionated person I've ever known.
I used to be way worse. Now I can actually, I have guiding principles for my opinion. So a lot of my opinions changed because they didn't align with my principles. So, but the book is a children's version, a young reader's version of an adult book on the omnivore dilemma. Yeah.
By Michael Pollan.
Yeah. And it's the kids' version of that.
Okay.
Some of the points are absolutely correct. Like some of it is fantastic, but the part where you shouldn't eat food with ingredients with more than 5 ingredients, or ingredients you can't pronounce.
Yeah. Well, that becomes a problem of definition. You know what I mean? Like if you think about, this is just an example because it's off the top of my head. Like when you start to group people, right?
Right.
Like there's an infinite number of ways you can group people. So like you can group people, like let's just say you were to group you and I, right? Mm-hmm. You could group us as Caucasian. You could group us as male. You could group us as where we live, socioeconomic status, handedness, IQ, hobbies, language. Like you could just go on and on and on, right? And the same thing with food. Like you could say an ingredient, like an apple is only one ingredient, or you could say an apple is 2,000 ingredients.
Exactly. Yeah. No, again, some of the points were good. Some of them were valid concerns, but didn't. There's definitely a political spin on it, and you can have a political spin, but in a children's book, in a children's book, you shouldn't have a political spin. But if you do, you definitely need to present both sides of arguments, and there was none. And I read the whole, 300 pages, 200 pages. I read the whole thing last night. It is, and Liam, who understands, who likes politics as a hobby, is very unhappy that he has to read this book. It's quite comical to see a 10-year-old saying that, ranting about political bias in school assignments. that he did on his own. He approached me with that, and I thought it was hysterical.
That is actually pretty funny.
Yeah, but the book, I'm like some of the parts of the book I think are like I was reading, I was like, oh my god, I don't want a kid reading this. But then I thought about it, I was like, probably good. Like the guy goes to a slaughterhouse for chickens and kills chickens and describes it. I think that's something that you should know how your food is obtained.
Yeah.
Like I'm glad I didn't have to tell a 10-year-old how his food's obtained. But the first half of the book is all about the evils of corn. Like how corn is bad for you. Corn is not good for the environment. Corn is an evil crop. High fructose corn syrup will make you fat. It doesn't talk about moderation. Like,
speaking of corn, did you ever watch the video I told you about Dave Portnoy reviews corn?
I have not.
It is the best 4 minutes of YouTube you will see all year.
I don't know. I'm an old YouTube user. I remember the history of dance.
Dude, old YouTube is so much better than new YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to put it other than that, but old YouTube is way better than new YouTube.
I liked it when it was, I liked YouTube before people put music videos on it. That's when it got bad. When people started, not that music videos are bad, but that was like the historical decline. Music videos, and then everything went downhill. I'm not saying the music videos are bad, but the timeline is right there.
Yeah, that's true. I was going to say, I don't think there's any causality in that, but I understand your point, and I think you're probably correct.
Yeah, but I miss it when it was nothing but cat videos, and that was the best.
That also very true.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get into the carnivore diet.
Let's do it.
So what is the carnivore diet? Because I'm honest, I mean, I know it's eating meat. I honestly have not read into it too terribly much. All I know is that people have a lot of micronutrient deficiencies when they follow it.
Yeah, so basically the idea of the carnivore diet is you eat nothing but animal meat.
Oh, I was expecting more for that so I could walk away and grab something.
I mean, but like that's the basis of it, right? So
is it
I'm
the
not like
opposite of being a vegetarian?
Yes, but potentially even more extreme.
Okay.
Like, and I'm not the carnivore aficionado. Like, I've not read every carnivore diet book. I don't know every single variation there is. But my favorite word, the gestalt of the carnivore diet is you just eat animal meat and animal products. In the most extreme versions of carnivore diet, you just eat animal meat, right? So no dairy, no eggs, no anything like that. So the reason I would say the carnivore diet is probably more extreme than vegetarian or even vegan diets is if you look at like what we can eat as kind of like canonical foods in the vegetarian realm. I mean, you have every fruit, every vegetable, every grain, that's just an unlimited variety of food, right? If you just follow a carnivore diet, I mean, you have like a very small subset of actual food you can eat. Like you have beef and the organs of beef. You have poultry and the organs of poultry. You have pork and the organs of pork, which I would not recommend eating pig organs.
Yeah, you've never had like chitlin or anything?
No.
Oh.
Then you have like seafood, which I think even like some seafood's off on the carnivore diet. And that's like pretty much it.
Okay.
So in some cases, it's even more extreme than like vegan diets.
Okay. So I mean, it can start out being like the meat eater equivalent of vegetarian all the way up to a vegan, the exact opposite of a vegan.
Pretty much, yeah.
So is there, I mean, well, let's back up even easier. People are primates and we're predators, correct? Like that's what we descended from.
So yeah, I mean, so that's where some of the arguments I get very frustrated with on the carnivore diet is some of the claims they make about evolutionary biology are very inaccurate, right? So humans and monkeys, chimps, share a common ancestor, right? Which means we didn't evolve from chimps, we evolved from a common ancestor, right? And then, so you can kind of look at evolutionary biology, and then you can also look at some of our features, right? So if you look at, I mean, we can go everything from how our eyes are set,
that's
how our teeth are set, what enzymes we possess in our mouth and our stomach, what does our digestive tract look like, what does our metabolism look like? So what nutrients can we manufacture from other like things, like, you know, carbon skeletons, stuff like that? Like, what can we manufacture and what are we obligate to consume, right? So if you look at the human body, like, we have to consume some things that are in plants, right? Like, we have to consume vitamin C or you get scurvy,
right?
Like, that's why, like, if you look at how like some of the major diseases that occurred in people who were on ships, like scurvy hit people on ships because they couldn't bring fruit. They usually didn't bring fruit, and that's why they would resort to eating like shoe leather and rats because they would run out of food. But the main reason they would get sick and die is from scurvy, lack of vitamin C. So you have some things that like you just can't manufacture that only come from plants. So that's part of it. On the other side, we also have certain things that we really can't get from plants that we really have to get from animal products, right? So things like choline, some of the amino acids, it's really hard to get only from plants, etc. So we're definitely omnivores in the sense of from a biological perspective.
Yeah, and looking at, and I mean, and all your points, and I have a follow-up question with the vitamin C. Remind me on that. So, you know, just looking at our teeth, right? If we look at a dog or a wolf or a coyote that is a meat eater, they have very sharp teeth with big sharp canines. If you look at a horse, which is an omnivore, they have flat teeth that are all even with no canines. You look at us, we have a hybrid of the two, correct?
Yeah, I would say our dental structure is more herbivore than carnivore, but we do have some carnivorous traits in our. Yeah. Okay.
So when you look at, now we need vitamin C, we have to get it from plants. When you look at an animal that is a pure meat eating, a pure carnivore, a predator, let's go with just a dog or a wolf in the wild. So we'll take any supplementation in the diet out. We're looking at a wolf. Where do canines in the wild or lions get their vitamin C from? Do they need it?
That's a good question. I believe that they can manufacture.
They can make their own.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And then, like carnosine, where do animals like horses need carnosine, and where do they get it from since they eat grass?
Do you mean creatine?
Creatine, yeah.
So I believe that they manufacture it.
Okay.
So these are like some of the intricacies that I would have to like really look into.
Right. So, okay. So I mean, but in animals that don't need in omnivores, they're typically omnivores because they can manufacture what they need, what they would normally get from animals. They can manufacture it in themselves from their plant intake, and vice versa. Carnivores can typically manufacture what they need from what we would need from plants. They can manufacture in their diets.
Yeah, and I think it very much depends on like species, right? So I looked this up. Apparently, most herbivores can manufacture vitamin C, but there's like a very specific subset of mammals that can't make their own vitamin C, which I don't know how accurate this is, but apparently the haplorhine primates, also called dry-nosed primates, which includes us, the cavy rodents, e.g. guinea pigs, capybaras, the fruit bats, and a number of bird species cannot manufacture vitamin C. That's interesting. Yeah. But yes, so the carnivore diet does come with some nutrient deficiencies that can become fairly problematic.
Okay.
So you look very concerned.
My wife just texted me a picture of her car, another car, and a cop car, and said, "Oh my God." So I don't know what just happened, but I think, and she had to drive 1 mile to the dentist, so I don't know what's going on. So, is there any evidence that we are designed to just eat meat?
I would say most evidence suggests that we have suboptimal health without consuming plants.
Okay.
And the reason for that is if you look at most even nutritional epidemiology, as flawed as it is, if you look at kind of biochemical data, if you look at interventional studies, diets that are very low in plant food are generally associated with poor health outcomes.
Okay.
So increased risk of cardiovascular disease, increased risk of diabetes, increased risk of nutrient deficiencies, those sorts of things.
Okay. Are there any benefits that you can see or that literature shows to a carnivore diet, to a meat-only diet?
Yes. So I think it depends on the circumstances, right? I think in many cases, people can see a therapeutic benefit from switching to a carnivore diet because a lot of times you will remove some of the potentially problematic foods that you have in your diet, right? Some people may have issues with grains. Some people may have microbiome issues from consuming crazy foods or just the same foods over and over. And generally speaking, just consuming like animal meats can be a little bit easier to digest and process for short periods of time. And you can have pretty robust changes in your microbiome, and that may be beneficial. You may also be just removing many of the problematic foods in your diet that kind of help you clear up some of the issues. It's kind of just like any other elimination diet in many aspects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can eating, I guess I don't have any other questions. What is the, what are the, no, I guess we covered every question I could have. I don't have any questions anymore. It just
so you can eat steak. I just would not eat only steak.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it's which would you say is, and I'm not talking about sustainability, which overall health, we'll switch from weight loss, we'll avoid weight loss, we'll avoid sustainability from a overall health standpoint, which is better for you? A form of vegetarian and or veganism, or a form of the carnivore diet with or without dairy?
I would probably say a form of vegetarianism for long-term health. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's completely possible for humans to survive on a vegetarian diet, correct?
Yeah. And a vegetarian diet done fairly well is probably one of the better, healthier options of kind of long-term health.
Yeah. Okay. Compared to a carnivore diet or compared to an omnivore diet?
Compared to a carnivore diet.
Okay. And most likely for long-term health, just a healthy variety of meats and vegetables and meats and plants would be best.
Yes.
Are there any, last question, are there any performance benefits or muscle growing benefits to the carnivore diet, or weight loss benefits?
Weight loss benefits potentially, because if you're consuming just only essentially animal protein and animal fat, it may, depending on what types of meats you choose, it's probably going to be pretty difficult to consume a large amount of calories.
Okay. And it's pretty much a ketogenic diet too, as well, right?
Yes. Now, there is some evidence to suggest that at fairly high levels of protein, you may end up not entering into ketosis for gluconeogenic reasons, and also some intricacies of how the Krebs cycle works and oxaloacetate, but that's kind of a different story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Anybody have any questions? Nobody's asked a question yet. This is the first time that nobody's asked, but nobody wants to know about the carnivore diet, apparently.
I think either people are so sick of the carnivore diet and or it's Friday and we just have no listeners.
Friday.
Gotta get down on Friday. Oh, we should play that song.
I like that song. I don't know why everybody hated it.
Dude, it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that Rebecca Black was a very talented young woman, and people just gave her a bad rap.
Dude, the fact that I'm gonna look it up.
Right, and due to the fact that we're still talking about it, 10 years later? Like,
Let's see. It has had, I'm going to pull it up. How many views do you think it's had without looking?
120 million.
150 million.
I was close.
That's pretty good. What do you think her net worth is according to RebeccaBlackOnline.com and/or CelebrityNetWorth.com?
Not much.
What would be your guess?
I mean, is she still a singer?
I think her YouTube channel still runs.
Okay, if she's still running, probably a couple million.
1.5.
Okay. Yeah. Good for her.
Hey man, I'll take 1.5.
Yeah, it's more. She has more money than I do, so I'll take. I mean, she's doing something better than I am. So, Brett,
should we go to the next topic?
That's gluten, and again, something that I know what gluten is. I've worked with gluten-free clients before, but it's just not something that obviously celiac. I'm pretty well versed in, but it's just not something that I've ever really looked into outside of, well-written articles and textbooks and stuff that I've read. It's not something that I've continued looking into. So I'm not super familiar with gluten. Reasons outside of celiac people avoid it. I know people have gluten intolerances, and then there's the debate if you really can. So first, what is gluten?
So gluten is keep it as simple as possible, is a type of protein that is found in primarily wheat products. It's found in some other kind of species of grains, but it's a protein primarily found in wheat.
Okay. So what is to an average healthy person with no medical issues, is gluten beneficial, neutral, or harmful?
It's most likely neutral.
Okay.
And may be beneficial in some circumstances, but it's not because of the gluten per se. It's because of the context in which gluten is consumed.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that one?
So, for example, if you don't have any reaction to gluten, people who consume very low gluten diets generally also consume fairly low fiber diets and low phytonutrient diets.
Okay.
On average, right? So they get less whole grains, etc. That can happen.
Okay. So that is more of an intolerance that's caused by diet?
What do you mean by intolerance?
I don't know. Maybe I heard you wrong.
Yeah. So like, for example, like let's say somebody's normally consuming like a gluten containing diet, right? And they eat whole grain breads, and they, will have, high fiber meals, etc. And then all of a sudden they switch to a gluten-free diet, and the only thing they can have is like rice flour noodles, right? Or rice flour bread. Well, now they've removed fiber from their diet. They've removed some of the like nutrient dense whole wheat products.
Yeah. So, well, let's say like if I have and I think it's been a long day at 9:30 in the morning. I can't remember anything.
It's been a long day without you, my friends. You're welcome.
What the hell just happened? That was so random. I liked it though. It was right in the feels.
You know that scene from Monty Python and the Holy Grail where you never seen that?
No.
You'll have to YouTube Monty Python and the Holy Grail wedding.
Okay.
This guy's trying to marry his son, and he just keeps randomly breaking into song in the middle of the scene, and they're like, "Stop doing that."
Okay.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay, continue.
So if I have a relatively poor diet. I'm not consuming a lot of fiber, not consuming a lot of gluten. I'm not avoiding gluten, but I'm just
not eating it,
not consuming not a very healthy diet. And then all of a sudden I start consuming, like for a day or two, I switch my diet. I'm going to eat healthy, and I eat 5 times my normal gluten, my normal fiber in a day, and I keep doing that for like a week. And I probably, I mean, not even from necessarily the gluten, but from the fiber alone, I'm going to feel like crap. I don't know if the gluten has an effect on that or not.
Yeah, so it can be just the fiber.
Okay.
It may be just the gluten, or it may be the FODMAPs in the food.
Right.
Right. So that's part of the issue with kind of the whole. So there are, I kind of think about it. Actually, let me pull this up because it's helpful. I have a little table that I've made.
You have a table? You made a table?
Yes. And they,
in a spreadsheet?
I try to keep things as like organized in my brain as possible. So we have, here's kind of the way that I think about it. People fall into two different categories on two different axes. They either have celiac disease, which is a diagnosable genetic disease, or they do not have celiac disease, right?
Okay.
You're binary. You either have it or you don't.
Okay.
Then you either have a response to gluten or you don't.
Okay.
Right. So if you look at, this is just data that I pulled. So you can either be celiac or non-celiac. You can either respond to gluten or non-respond to gluten. Now, about 0.5 to 1%, depending on the year, 0.5 to 1% of the entire population has celiac disease, right? So that means that's right around 2.3, 2.4 million people in the United States. All of those people will have a bad response to gluten.
Yeah.
Now, there's another condition called non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Okay. Now, this is people who have not been diagnosed with celiac. They don't have the HLA haplotype. They don't have the histological or serological markers for it. But whenever they consume gluten, they report discomfort. They have an inflammatory response, etc. That is about 5 to 9% of people.
Okay.
Now, so that's just kind of what that looks like. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you actually take people who report non-celiac gluten sensitivity and you just feed them either a pill with placebo or a pill with gluten proteins, the people with placebo and gluten report the exact same rate of discomfort or symptoms. Right?
Is that a study has that been repeated multiple times, or is that like a one?
That is been repeated several times.
Okay.
Trying to see if I have. It's cited somewhere in this article that you can find on NutriWiki.org called "The Gluten Manifesto: Everything You Need to Know About Gluten."
Only you would write something called the Gluten Manifesto.
Yes, I thought it was hilarious.
I think it is.
So yeah, so that's one of the interesting pieces. So this whole like gluten story is even more interesting than that. So that's interesting in and of itself, right? Now, on the other side of the coin, if you take people, this is an experiment that was done. Let me back up. The primary reason that gluten can cause problems for people who don't necessarily have celiac is there is some evidence to suggest that gluten proteins, when they're broken down and they're present in your stomach lining or in your stomach, it can actually cause, so you have these cells in your intestines called enterocytes, and they're kind of like stuck together like this. Now, think about it this way. What is in your digestive tract?
Poop.
Bacteria, right? Poop. Bacteria. Poopy bacteria. What is on the inside of your body?
Blood.
Yes.
More bacteria.
Blood and the immune system.
Okay.
What triggers the immune system?
Foreign bodies.
Foreign bodies, which is bacteria, right? So your cells are like, I'm going to keep the bacteria and my poopies from my immune system, right? So there is some evidence to suggest that gluten, when it's in your digestive tract, kind of causes your cells to kind of open up a little bit.
Okay.
Which can allow your immune system to interact with your bacteria. So whenever you eat gluten, you have an immune response.
Okay.
There's some evidence to suggest that in all people, exposure to gluten may do that. Now that evidence is a little weak. It's a little crazy. We don't really understand it, but there is some evidence to suggest that may be the case. But we don't see clinical manifestation of problems in most people. So it gets a little more complicated than that too, unfortunately. It also appears that it may not be the actual gluten proteins themselves, but these, what we call FODMAPs, which are the fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols, I think. So these types of sugars that can be fermentable and cause some issues in your stomach. So that's kind of what we know. Now, there may be some microbiome issues involved. It's a very complicated question. So here's really what we kind of know. One, people with celiac should avoid gluten because it does cause problems. People with non-celiac gluten sensitivity may actually have a gluten sensitivity, or they may just have a sensitivity to these FODMAPs, or just something else that coincides with gluten. It may not actually be gluten, but they do show symptoms, and just avoiding those types of foods appears to be beneficial for those people.
Okay.
On the flip side, people who have no reaction to gluten don't appear to really benefit from avoiding it. So, as with all things in my life, I make tables. So here's how I always summarize this topic. If you have celiac disease, you're going to respond to gluten. So you should probably eat gluten-free. If you don't have celiac disease and you respond to gluten, evidence largely supports eating gluten-free, but it may not actually be the gluten in the food that's the problem. It may be other things. So you may be able to still consume it in different context. And then if you don't have celiac disease and you don't respond to gluten, the evidence does not support a benefit from eating gluten-free.
And that bottom right column, the no celiac, no response to gluten, evidence does not support benefit from eating gluten-free. That's over 90% of the U.S. population, correct?
That is 294 million people out of the 320 million in this country.
Okay. So a large percentage.
Yes, like 95-ish%.
Okay. Perfect. Now, is there any harm in somebody with no celiac, no response to gluten? Is there any harm in them eating gluten-free?
I have a table for that too.
Oh man, it's you.
So no, there really is no harm in avoiding it, as long as you kind of have an overall nutrient dense diet. I mean, you don't have to consume it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Do you have anything else you wanted to add in there that we didn't get to?
Consuming it does not make you gain weight. There was some weird.
I remember that.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. It was a diet like this. The gluten-free diets are what they were for weight loss.
Yeah, and I have that in here somewhere. Oh, I have it in a presentation.
And in my opinion, I remember I read one of the book. I read part of a couple chapters at Barnes and Noble, and I remember the overall premise. It just seemed like it was weight loss, but because you're cutting out like most carbs, like they were cutting out a third of all the foods you can eat: carbs, fats, proteins, and yeah, people are going to lose weight when they're focusing on the quality of their diet. They'll lose weight. It's going to happen.
I think not surprisingly, I think I actually have a slide on this. Let me see if I can find it.
Is there anything that you don't already have a slide somewhere on?
This is a good question.
Because I think that every conversation we've ever had, I bet you if I asked, like, Brad, do you have slides anywhere on cryptocurrency?
No.
Do you have anything prepared anywhere on cryptocurrency?
In my brain.
Oh, okay. I figured maybe you'd have a slide.
Where is? Oh, actually, I think where did I put that?
Look at the brain on Brad. Not doing a good job. Well, you look for that. Let's get to some questions.
Let's do it. I am going to find this, though.
I'm going to hide your screen, though. Zipporah said, well, now you're going to get responsive of people hating on Rebecca Black. Well, You can't
Don't do it. If you email me hating Rebecca Black, I will ignore your emails.
Yeah.
She was a highly successful person before the age of 18. Even if it was a viral video, that's more than I can say in my life.
Yeah.
At 18, I was a disaster.
I think I was just drunk.
That coincides with a disaster in my mind.
Yeah, I was a fun drunk though. I had a job. Like
Well, that's good.
I had a good job. Like, Tanya said, "Hi. So it seems like moderation with everything is the best way to go as far as overall health and sustainability." Yes.
That would appear to be the case.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I found it, Jay.
Moderation, I would say, is the moderation and variety with everything is, in my broad statement opinion, the best way for overall health and weight management. Like use common sense and moderation.
I would say that's pretty true.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an absolute statement. Obviously, there are exceptions, but for the average person, eat, drink in moderation, and don't take anything to an extreme.
Yeah.
Did you find it?
I did find it. I'm trying to see high fat diet.
Brad, if you had to pick one, which would you pick? Keto or carnivore? You have to follow one diet for a month.
Keto.
Keto? Why keto over carnivore?
Because with keto, I can still have like nuts and seeds.
Okay. Yep, me too.
Things like that.
Yeah, because you can eat everything in the carnivore diet on keto.
Yeah. Okay, so I do have data on the weight gain, just so you know.
Okay, let's see.
These are just slides that I made, so they're not super fancy.
You're everything you do is super fancy, Brad. You're a fancy lad.
So
this is the least fancy slide I've ever seen from you.
Don't worry, there's more coming. Does gluten make you gain weight? In rodents, maybe. In humans, no compelling data. So there's only one study that's actually that has any evidence on this that I'm aware of. And this was a couple of years ago. This was a study done in animals. Wheat gluten intake increases weight gain and adiposity associated with reduced thermogenesis and energy expenditure in an animal model. So here's basically what they did. They took mice, they put them on a normal diet, and then they gave them gluten. And they also put them on a very high fat diet, which in mice, if you give them a high fat diet, they gain weight and they just they eat almost double what they normally would eat.
Okay.
So if you feed mice a high fat diet ad libitum, they become obese and they become type 2 diabetic.
Do humans do that?
Yes.
Okay.
That's kind of the experiment we've been running since forever. So basically what they showed was that if you give mice a boatload of gluten and a high fat diet, it can make the weight gain a little bit worse. Not a lot worse, but a little bit worse, right? So you do gain a little bit more weight if you have a high fat diet and large amounts of gluten. And it's primarily because they start moving around less. It doesn't really change their metabolism, but they just move around less. And my guess is because they probably don't feel great consuming that much gluten. That's really what this data shows. Now, here's the rub on this research study. They got 4.5% of their entire daily calorie intake just from gluten protein. So that would be 60 grams of just that in humans. And I think like in a full serving of like a gluten containing food, you're maybe getting 1 gram of this stuff.
Yeah.
So you would be consuming huge amounts of it to get that. And I think mice are much different than humans. So they probably process it a little bit differently. Yeah, but that's the only data that I'm aware of.
I know exactly what you meant. I think mice are different than humans, but it's just funny to hear somebody say, I think mice are different than humans. Yes, they're quadrupeds for one. Let's start with that one.
They are quadrupeds, which you'll find this interesting. Or you may not. So my PhD work was in cardiovascular, right? And so we were looking at diet and exercise and how it changes essentially the morphology and contractility of the heart. And so we were using mice as a model for diabetes and exercise and all sorts of stuff. And we went out to dinner with a group of scientists after a conference, and people spent 2 hours arguing about the differences between the human heart and the mouse heart, because humans are like most of our blood system runs vertical, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, so theirs runs horizontal.
And mice is horizontal. So how much does that change the physics of the heart? So we spent 2 hours arguing about that very ridiculous point.
Well, now I want to be involved in that conversation because that's really interesting.
Isn't that interesting though?
Yeah, because
it changes the physics.
I mean, most animals, it runs horizontal, right? I mean,
yeah, for most of your vasculature runs horizontal.
Yeah, that's crazy. I never have thought about that. That changes. Does a mouse heart sit vertically or horizontal?
So it sits horizontal, right? So it pumps.
So the atria are towards the head and the ventricles are towards its back, or it sits top up?
No. Yeah. It sits along the longitudinal axis of the mouse.
So if it stood up, it would have the same arrangement as us.
It's like when we lie down, right?
So I wouldn't say to me, obviously, I don't know any of the research on mice, but I do know human hearts fairly well. Does it make? I wouldn't think it would make a big difference overall, does it?
We concluded that we don't really know, but there's some theoretical differences. So, but what is interesting, like if you look at humans, we pump blood up, right, to the aorta, and then it comes down.
Yeah.
Right. Basically, from here, it just all goes down.
Yeah.
But how does it get back up?
What do you mean? Pressure ejection from the ventricles.
But how much pressure are you getting down at your feet or your calves from the top?
Well, you can measure that.
Yeah, but it's not very much. So do you know the primary mechanism of venous return?
Right.
Do you know what the primary mechanism of pumping blood back up to your heart is?
Stepping.
Yeah, skeletal muscle contractions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you have the little valves in your veins that are like one-way valves.
Yeah, that's why it's always when you have an elderly parent and they ask you to go get something from the kitchen, you say, no, I love you and I want you to have good circulation. You get off your ass and go get it yourself. You're really helping that person by being lazy and making them go do the work. Like it's so much better for them.
That's also why when you're doing IVs, there's certain directionalities you want to push the needles.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you go against those venous flaps, and it's
and if you hit a vein, if you hit a valve, it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Now I want to look up the position of hearts in different mammals and see how that.
If you want to look into some really interesting research, there's a guy at the University of Idaho where I did my PhD work. He did comparative biomechanics.
Okay.
So he looked at like how do humans walk and what are the bioenergetics and what are the musculoskeletal modeling of all that in humans, and then he compared it to kangaroos, kangaroo rats, horses, grizzly bears. So they put grizzly bears on treadmills and watch them walk. It's pretty cool.
Huh. That is interesting. Kangaroos would be. I wonder how similar a kangaroo's physiology is. Like if their cardiovascular system is more similar to humans than a rat, because they're bipedal.
Yeah. So yeah, you should look this guy up. He's awesome.
Yes, I mean afterwards. Well, no, you know what? Do it tonight, because if you do it today, I'm not going to get work done, and I'll just be reading about kangaroo hearts, and then you'll get mad at me for not getting work done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's a distractor, and now I'm mad at you for paying attention to it.
I'm just going to tell you some of the cool papers he's published.
Okay.
Jumping mechanics of desert kangaroo rats.
Okay.
Exploring bipedal hopping through computational evolution.
Okay.
Grizzly bear, Ursus arctos horribilis.
Did you do that study?
Locomotion.
Is that
four-limb joint mechanics across speed in the sagittal and frontal planes?
Is that what study were you doing with grizzly bears?
So You want the full story or the short story?
The short. I've heard the whole thing. Just the short story.
So we were working on a study looking at cardiovascular and metabolic changes in a grizzly bear that goes into hibernation and then out of hibernation. So basically, they become super obese and insulin resistant, going into hibernation, and then afterwards they go back to normal. And there's really no lasting long effects, right? Whereas humans, if you become insulin resistant, there are long-term things that can happen, right? So we're looking at that. But the funny thing is, the paper that was published out of that got retracted because one of the lab assistants at Amgen who was doing some of the bench work, like fudged some data on one of the figures to make it look better.
Oh,
so that was not great.
I never knew that last part. When did that happen?
Oh, 4 years ago.
Oh, I just knew about the paper. I never knew it was. It
was the cover article on a cell metabolism.
Oh,
journal.
Did in your opinion, did that data that was faked, modified, whatever, did that make a difference in the results of the study?
No, it wouldn't have changed that's the thing, is like it would not have changed the overall conclusions of the paper.
Okay.
And the thing is, like, nobody noticed it. Like, it wasn't like the journal. The actual, like, Amgen was doing like some just QA QC in the lab and found some stuff. And it was like, all right, we have to retract this.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
A couple people said, gonna catch the replay. Me too. I have this thing called the gym. Thanks, guys.
What is El-Him?
El-Him? Where do you see that?
The gym, El-Him. I was just making a joke on. I don't understand what that is.
Oh.
Get it? Like, because we don't get to go to the gym anymore.
Yeah, a gym. Adam Crosby, the Carnivore Diet. Is that? Oh, I think she's tagging somebody. She's tagging because her last name's Crosby. She's tagging. I was like, is this an author that we don't know about? And this is somebody related to this author? Yeah. Sephora said, why do all these studies on grizzly bears? Why do they do all these studies on grizzly bears instead of black bears or some other variety less known for attacking people with a less threatened population?
So in this specific case, the bears, this was an animal preserve. So there's a veterinary school there, and these bears were, like the cubs were left, like when they were very little. So they were taken in and they were like raised in like an animal sanctuary, and then they were used for research. So it wasn't like they went out and captured these bears. They were like rescue bears.
Rescue bears, is that like a rescue ranger?
You know what was really cool is, so the main vet, she actually raised these bears herself. So she like actually had a connection with them, and we would do echoes on the bears.
Oh, that's cool.
And we'd keep them in like cages, but she could feed them a bottle of like honey water while they were awake and just do an echo on them, and they would just sit there and drink it. And she could be like, raise your left paw, and they'd raise their left paw.
Really?
And then you could be like, raise your right paw, and you could raise their right paw. Yeah, they're pretty awesome.
Do you remember the TV bear, Gentle Ben?
I don't think so.
Okay, so there was a bear. I don't remember. I think it was well before my time, but it was called Gentle Ben. He was on TV and all this stuff. But he was there. We used to go snowmobiling in Eagle River, Wisconsin. And I remember being little, and we went snowmobiling. And when you're snowmobiling, you just go bar to bar to bar. And we're talking the 80s and early 90s. So kids would go. You could bring kids going to bars. Who cares? And we walked into a bar, and it was a bar where they raised Gentle Ben, and they had a pen of like 10 baby bear cubs that you could just go and play with. And I like in this bar in Wisconsin, I remember it clear as day, multiple years going up there and just going to roll. That was like the whole point of the trip for me being a kid, like going to go play with little bears for like a couple hours every winter.
Dude, no, thank you.
I mean, they were cubs. I mean, they were like this big. They were tiny.
Still,
no, it was
no, thank you.
But there were like 6 kids in there, no supervision, just playing while all the parents were drinking, just rolling around with bears.
That is nutty, mate.
Yeah. Yeah, the early 90s and late 80s were a different time apparently.
Dude, I was only alive for about 22 months in the 80s, but I miss the 80s. Hey, what's on our agenda today besides this?
This is it. This is all I'm doing. I am out of here. I am going to just go start drinking. It's 10. That's early enough for me, and I'll see you on Thursday. I'm going to take a couple days off.
So if you have signed up for coaching and you have not been assigned a coach by next Thursday, please send all of your horribly angry emails to Jay.
No, I got a 10-year-old who's going to do all the signing and the emails. He's going to reply to everything.
That makes so much more sense now.
Yeah. I'm just going to pay. I told Liam, I said, I will pay you 10% of minimum wage, and he was like, perfect.
Did you say, dude, that's more than you're making now?
No, it's not.
Cool.
It's not more than he makes now.
How is he making any money?
I pay allowance. He has chores, and I pay fair. I pay fair for the chores because I don't want to do them. So I took the time it takes me to do something. I took how much I make an hour, and then I put it into his chore chart. It takes him like 3 times longer to do something, but so it's a fair pay schedule. But he gets taxed on it.
So with how many hours you work, you probably are making $3.62.
I based it off a 50-hour work week, just to be fair.
So $4.30.
Yeah, exactly. So, but he gets taxed, and we have different tax rates in the house that vary based on your GPA.
That's hilarious.
So if he wants 0 taxes, he has to have a 4.0 GPA. I'm sorry, 10% taxes.
I was going to say there is no 0%
yeah,
tax.
so he went down to a 10% tax bracket if he gets a 4.0 in his GPA. So he's been in a 10% tax bracket all summer, and I'm really hoping this kid gets a B because he bumps immediately up to 10% with 1 B.
So do you get to write off this as an expense?
I probably could, but that seems like not something that's worth going to prison for.
I was going to say that might be bad.
Yeah, but no, he pays his taxes. So I will have Liam do this, but there's no tax on food. We're fair. There's no tax on food. Well, I do eat some of his food, so there is slightly a tax on it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I told him when he starts junior high next year. I told him when he starts junior high, he has to start paying his taxes. He has to earn enough to cover taxes to cover his internet.
Well, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, so he has to. So there's going to be minimum chores per week.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, because sometimes he doesn't do chores. He doesn't do them. He doesn't get paid, but then he can't buy stupid computer games.
That's true.
Yeah, so I can always tell when he wants something because all the dishes are always put away clean. His laundry's done. He asked me if I need any laundry done. Everything's spotless in the room, and then on Friday when he gets paid, he's immediately at 6 a.m. when people are permitted to talk to me in my house at 6 a.m. He's there's no speaking to me before 6.
That was like that text message I showed you the other day.
Oh yeah,
from my wife. She sent like a very formal request via text. And I was like, this is pretty formal. She said, it's business hours in this house.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny.
So
all right, I have to go get more coffee and I have to finish all these projects.
We have a meeting today.
We do have a meeting today. I might not be there.
Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna send Liam.
I actually may reschedule that meeting because I really don't have much to talk about.
We actually have quite a bit to talk about.
Which meeting are you talking about?
Mine and yours. What meeting are you talking about?
I was talking about the one we have later today.
What meeting do we have later?
About our recent partnership contract we signed.
Oh, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm going to reschedule that one.
We'll have to figure that one out. We're going to talk about that in a second. But no, you and I have a meeting. We have a lot to talk about. So anyways, everybody, we will see you next time on the same macro time.
On the same macro time at the same macro channel.
Whatever.
Stop. Wait, where's that? So little to do and so much time. What movie is that from?
What the hell just happened? I don't even know what just happened right there.
You started to say backwards, right?
No, I was saying I took over the first part for you.
Yeah, so I said it backwards. And then I quoted a movie.
Yeah, what movie?
Where they go, we have so little to do and so much time.
Step Brothers?
Stop, scratch, reverse that. What movie is that from?
Step Brothers?
No, it's an old movie.
Boogie Nights.
Older than that.
Casablanca.
Newer than that.
Back to the Future.
Older than that.
Okay, I give up.
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
That's okay. I should. And now I remember exact scene.
He says it several times.
What if I just wear my hair like this every day, bro? What if I part it down the middle?
Can you please cut your hair?
No, I do have a haircut appointment on September 2nd.
Okay, you should cut it super short.
No. It's just getting trimmed. I'm gonna grow up past my ears.
I think you should put it in a ponytail.
I can.
I think you should.
I can put it in like a little tiny like man pony. I can't believe this is what our show is right now.
Can you see it? Can you see my little ponytail?
I think that's your future.
Yeah. No, it's gonna grow long though. I want the sides to be able to come down to like here.
Yeah.
Like to my chin. I want to be able to braid my hair to my beard.
That's fair.
I mean, that's a legitimate thing, right? I mean, I am getting it trimmed though, so it looks a little more professional for you.
You're gonna look like the guy who owns Burt's Bees.
I don't know what he looks like.
Have you ever bought a thing of Burt's Bees? You know, like the guy on the front with the beard? That's Burt.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think we should call it a quits now.
Why?
You don't know who Burt from Burt's Bees is?
What the hell are you talking about? Is this like a beekeeper?
No, it's like a chapstick.
Oh yeah, no, I don't use chapstick.
What?
I'm a man.
Yeah, I'm gonna put a link in here for you, Jay. You're gonna like it.
I googled it. I don't see a picture of anybody though.
Wait till you see Burt.
I don't get it. I just want to look like Bradley Cooper when he had long hair.
This is Burt.
There's nothing here.
I'm gonna show you, and you're gonna like it. This is Burt. That's what you're gonna look like.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
I have a hat like that too.
This does not surprise me.
No, my hair's gonna be not my hair. That's the worst thing. Is this a different Brad, not the
There's two of us.
There's two Brads. There's Brad Morgan and Brad Dieter. This is Bradley.
Together we make a Brad Mo Dieter.
Yeah. This is Bradley Pendleton Dieter.
That's my name.
PhD extraordinaire.
All right. Well, this is devolving rapidly here in utter unadulterated trash. So we're going to cut this out. We're going to say we'll see you on Monday at the same macro time.
Same macro channel.
And with that,
I'm glad it's not just me who's had a long week. It's
cue the outro music. Let's go.